I'm Rebecca.
I'm Caitlin.
I'm Nessa.
This is the Family Showdown!
Howdy folks, I'm Hunter Thomason from the Family Showdown. Over on the Dice Tower YouTube channel, I regularly contribute to their Board Game Breakfast variety show. And lately I've been doing a Through the Years series where I'm looking at the top game on Board Game Geek by year. I started with 1970. And what I thought I would do is over here on our Family Showdown channel, I would put all these episodes together by decade so that you have them all in one spot and don't have to look through all the different Board Game Breakfast episodes to find each individual one. So I hope you enjoy it. I want to give thanks to Board Game Geek for their awesome database that made this possible. And I want to say a few caveats. One is that the rankings over time have likely changed. So the rankings are as they were when I produced the episode, and the ratings and all those sorts of things. So things might have changed up a little bit, but still I think this will be an interesting thing to look at. So I hope you enjoy it. Let's start off with this decade. $1990. Take a look at the top 5. We see the number 1 game from 1990 is The Republic of Rome, coming in at 443. The Republic of Rome is a political negotiation war game which simulates 250 years of history of Rome. The Republic of Rome is what I would consider an epic strategy game. The games can take 5 or more hours. Probably more hours. The Republic of Rome still has a bit of a cult following. I see the forums on Board Game Geek is still somewhat active, and there's a living rule set for this game that was updated as recently as 2 years ago, 28 years after the game first came out. Take a look at the ratings, over 3,800 of them. We see tons of 8s for an overall rating of 7.5. Let's take a look at the weight.
The complexity rating, in my opinion, is the most useless stat on Board Game Geek because people just don't know how to rate complex games. I don't even know what it means.
It's a 4.33. Republic of Rome looks like a game I'd want to play. Negotiation, warfare, dice rolling, hand management. Crazy. I want to get my hands on a copy of this game. Maybe I'll find one someday. 1991. Taking a look at the top 5 from 1991, we see the number 1 game is Teach You. Coming in at number 150. Teach You is a 4-player only, 2 teams of 2 players, trick-taking / ladder climbing game. Not that kind of ladder climbing. Ladder climbing, that means where basically you lead a type of card, maybe one card or a pair of cards, and each person around the table has to increase or play a better version of that, whatever category you started with. In doing a little research on Teach You, and from just knowledge of attending conventions and such, this game has kind of a insane, crazed fan base, maybe? I've seen people with Teach You's tattoos and license plates. They kind of like, it's like a lifestyle. Take a look at the ratings, nearly 13,000 of them. We see tons of 8s for an overall rating of 7.6. Take a look at the weight. I don't care what other people say, I like the weight of games. It comes in at a 2.34, still pretty light, but it is just kind of a, dare I say, generic trick-taking game. Even after all these years, Teach You is insanely popular among select people. Are you among that selection? See you next time. The Lost 1992 episode. Take a look at the top 5 from 1992. We see the number 1 game is Modern Art, coming in at 225. Modern Art is an auction game. In fact, the players will be doing 4 different kinds of auctions throughout the game. It's part of Reiner Knizia's so-called auction trilogy, which includes the game Medici, and Raw. It's sandwiched in the middle of those two. The Raw higher rated, Medici lower rated, and Modern Art right in the middle. When looking at this game, the first thing I thought of, because I haven't played it before, is there's a Jackbox game called Bidiots, which reminds me a lot of the rules of this game. The only difference is the players actually draw the art in bidets, whereas in modern art it uses just cards for artwork. Take a look at the ratings, over 16,000 of them. We see tons of 7s for an overall rating of 7.4. Taking a look at the weight, it comes into the 2.3, which sounds about right for this game. Even though it's a pretty simplistic auction game, there are 4 different types of auctions and rules for how each of those are conducted. So if you're looking for a light little introductory, well, what I would call introductory, auction game, you might try to find modern art, although it looks like it's kind of out of print right now, but it's been reprinted numerous times, so I'm sure it'll be back in print real soon. See you next time. 1993. Taking a look at the top 5, we see the number 1 game from 1993 is Magic the Gathering, coming in at number 151. Magic the Gathering is a collectible card game that's still going strong after all these years. It has over 20,000 different cards. I myself was a Magic player way back at the very, very beginning. I had a pretty decent collection back in the day. In fact, when I got heavy back into board gaming around 2015 or so, I sold off most of the valuable cards in my collection to start another collection. Take a look at the ratings, over 30,000 ratings. Lots of 7s and 8s for an overall rating of 7.5. Take a look at the weight, it comes into 3.2, which might seem a little high for a simple card game, but there is a lot of terminology. In doing a little research on this game, I decided to dig up some of my old Magic stuff. I still have some hanging around. In fact, I have a first edition. It's beat up and tore up and not in very good shape. First edition Magic the Gathering Pocket Player's Guide. And I still have 2 big giant boxes full of Magic cards. I'm sure Magic collectors would cringe that I just threw them in boxes. I stopped playing Magic way back in the late 90s. I haven't really touched it since. I've had the itch to maybe put a deck together now that I've dug through some cards, but maybe not. See you next time. 1994. Taking a look at the top 5 from 1994, we see the number 1 game is Blood Bowl, 3rd edition, coming in at 344. Blood Bowl is a fantasy football game, where you draft professional players and you get points based on how well they actually perform in live professional sporting events. Wait. Orcs and humans fight each other in a fantasy-themed football game. Blood Bowl is one of my most played board games of all times. I played it like crazy in high school and college, but I played the 2nd edition of Blood Bowl. The 3rd edition actually is where the rules radically changed and they look more like the modern rules of Blood Bowl. Taking a look at the rankings of all the Blood Bowl editions, we see that the 3rd edition is actually the highest rated edition of Blood Bowl. Taking a look at the ratings, over 5,000 of them, we see tons of 8s and lots of 7s and 9s for an overall rating of 7.5. Taking a look at the weight, it comes in at 2.98. The basic game isn't too complicated, but it has tons and tons of little small rules. All the different races have unique abilities and players. There's spell casting. There's ways to upgrade your players to professional. There's all sorts of stuff. There's campaigns. There's leagues. All sorts of stuff going on. But the base game isn't that complicated. I still get my Blood Bowl fix, though, with the computer game. Still to this day, I play it every once in a while. It's awesome. Play you some Blood Bowl. See you next time. 1995. Taking a look at the top 5 from 1995, we see the number 1 game is El Grande, coming at number 62. Finally, another game that I actually own. This one's got a little story behind it. This game was originally owned by one Tom Vassell, the illustrious Tom Vassell. I bought this at Dice Tower Con at a flea market type situation. So I have a little piece of Tom living in my house. El Grande is an area majority game where you are putting cubes all over a map of medieval Spain, trying to take control of areas for victory points. It has a cool action selection system, but the cool thing is a nice little cube tower, but it's not really like a normal, what we consider a cube tower, where you put cubes in and little cubes pop out and it like does damage or decides actions or things like this. It's kind of like a memory game. So you take some of your little cubes You put it in the tower, and then you have to remember how many you put in there. Take a look at the ratings, over 22,000 of them. We see tons of 8s and then a nice little bell curve action going around those 8s for an overall rating of 7.8. Take a look at the weight. It comes in at 3.06, which is about right. It's a nice little mid-weight Euro game coming into that 90-minute sweet spot I love for game length. So if you're looking for a bare bones kind of area control, area majority game, El Grande might be the game for you. See you next time. 1996. Take a look at the top 5 from 1996. We see the number 1 game is Hannibal, Rome versus Carthage, coming in at number 210. But it's the 15th best war game. Hannibal, Rome versus Carthage is an asymmetrical 2-player war game that uses multi-use cards to simulate the battle between Hannibal versus the Roman Republic circa 200 BC. Take a look at the ratings, almost 4,700 of them. We see lots of 8s and then a nice, lovely little bell curve around the 8s for an overall rating of 7.8. Take a look at the weight. It comes at a 3.44, which seems about right for a war game I know absolutely nothing about. I'm still itching to play my first real war game, what the war gamers call a war game. This could be the one. It has a Roman theme. I might be able to rope Rebecca into playing this one. Maybe not. See you next time. 1997. Taking a look at the top 5 from 1997, we see the number 1 game is Tigris and Euphrates, coming in at number 84. Tigris and Euphrates is the number 1 ranked game on Board Game Geek by the infamous Reiner Knizia. It's the only game that makes the top 100. Tigris and Euphrates is a tile placement area control game, which has a very interesting mechanism. You score in 4 different categories. I'm not going to say what the 4 categories are, but 4 categories, and they take the lowest score of those 4 categories as your final score. This mechanism is used more and more, I notice, in games these days. Take a look at the ratings, almost 25,000 of them. We see mostly 8s and lots of 9s and 7s for an overall rating of 7.7. Take a look at the weight. We see it comes in at a 3.51, pretty heavy. I kind of looked at the rules of this game. It didn't look that complicated, so maybe it's in the decision making. Tigris and Euphrates is probably my most almost bought game. I've put it in carts and almost put buy on this game more than probably any game ever. And you know why? Because rumors have it, and rumors have some truth to them usually. Rumors have it that 2-player version of this game is not so good. So, if you've played this game 2 players, let me know what you think. Make me push that buy button. See you next time. 1998. Take a look at the top 5 from 1998. We see the number 1 game is Samurai, coming in at 201. At first glance, Samurai looks like a war game, a dudes on the map game where you're vying for control of the areas of Japan. But it's an abstract tile laying game. Samurai makes up what some call the Knizia tile laying trilogy. It started with Tigris and Euphrates, which, if you remember last time, it was the number 1 game from 1997. Samurai, number 1 game from 1998, and the 3rd game in the trilogy, Through the Desert, if you were paying attention, it's the number 2 game from this year. Well, 1998. Take a look at the ratings, over 14,000 of them. We see lots of 8s and 7s for an overall rating of 7.4. Taking a look at the weight, comes in at a 2.49, kind of a lightish game. In fact, it's the middleweight game of the 3, so Tigris and Euphrates is the heavier of the 3. Samurai in the middle, and Through the Desert, a much lighter game. I'm not a huge fan of abstract games. This one looks interesting though. Samurai. See you next time. 1999. Take a look at the top 5 from 1999. We see the number 1 game is Paths of Glory, coming in at 141. But it's the 3rd best war game. But wait, is it the 3rd best war game? We'll revisit this in 2005 and 2012. Paths of Glory, the First World War, 1914 to 1918. because it has a subtitle, pits the Central Forces against the Allied forces in a card-driven World War I simulation that takes about a quick 8 hours to play. Take a look at all these chits. Take a look at the ratings, over 4,300 of them. We see lots of 8s and lots of 9s and 10s for an overall rating of 8.1. Take a look at the weight. It comes in at a 3.83. I still have a very strong suspicion that war games weights are very underrated. So if you're looking to game like it's 1999, Paths of Glory, the First World War, 1914 to 1918, might be the game for you. See you next time.